Those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. Does it seem to you like the economy is rebounding from the crash of 2008? Depending upon where you live, unemployment figures are down. Gains have replaced losses in the stock market, and the real estate market appears to have recovered from its collapse. Unfortunately, when you dig into the heart of the matter, these are surface improvements, and an economic recovery is not that simple. The next financial collapse is going to be worse than any we have seen in at least half a century. And the demise of our economy is not a decade or two away. It is, in fact, right around the corner. There are historical precedents for all of this to happen, and the U.S. government is ignoring all the warning signs. There will be no money for a bank bailout like in 2008. There will be no money for another car manufacturer bailout like there was in 2009. There will be no money for any bailouts of any kind. By the way, did you know that GM had made profits of over $22 billion since 2009? Meanwhile, the U.S. government, a.k.a. the taxpayers, a.k.a. you, lost close to $12 billion on that deal. Economic collapses date all the way back to the fall of the Medici Bank in 1494. The history is there for the studying. The British bank, Over Gurney and Company, had been one of the most successful banks in the world. It was so successful it could lend money to other banks. That is, until Over Gurney and Company started making investments without considering the consequences of future events. Their investments tanked so badly that the British government tried to bail them out. The bank refused, resulting in the crash of 1866. The bank lost $1 billion, but that was small change when considering that over 200 businesses failed and terror strikes were evident throughout the United Kingdom. There is a reason that the Confederate dollar ended up worthless at the end of the American Civil War. In a misguided attempt to appear powerful in the diplomatic world, the Confederate Army halted all cotton imports to Europe. Unfortunately, since Europe was the leading importer of cotton, the embargo caused a substantial loss in income to the Confederate States, as well as exceedingly high inflation. The Confederate dollar dropped from being worth 90 cents to the U.S. dollar to less than 2 cents to the U.S. dollar. Since the Panic of 1893 happened only 30 years before the 1929 stock market crash succeeding the Great Depression, it is often overlooked. However, the only other U.S. financial disaster worse than the Panic of 1893 was, in fact, the Great Depression. Over 16,000 businesses failed, and unemployment rose to over 16% when the stock market crashed in June 1893. It took 4 years for the U.S. economy to fully recover. This is by no means a full list of economic failures that the government of the United States should be paying attention to. Spain declared bankruptcy for the 4th time in 1596. The French stock market collapsed in the 1790s. The formation of the USSR was a direct result of the Russian economic failure in the early 1920s. The British Empire fell in the late 1940s due to the massive war debts it had accumulated. Does that sound familiar at all? And of course, in more recent times, we've had the housing bubble of 2008 and the Greek economic crisis, which has been going on since 2009. The signs are in place, and anyone paying attention should be able to see them. This catastrophe is going to affect your stock and bond investments, your savings, and any retirement plan you might have. The national debt is skyrocketing like never before. It is currently close to $18 trillion and grows exponentially every day. Every single working person in the United States could donate 100% of their income and it would not pay off the debt. Not to mention the U.S. public debt is over $36 trillion. This is consumer debt, treasury bills, and municipal bonds added together. The world's oldest global banking institution, the Bank for International Settlements, has issued reports warning of dangerous new asset bubbles. Argentina is about to make its second debt default in just over a decade, to the tune of $539 million payment. The French unemployment rate is at a new high. Consumer prices in Japan are rising faster than they have in the past 32 years. China actually has more corporate debt than the U.S. does. The Greek unemployment rates are at over 26.7%, and of those people, 67.5% of them have been unemployed for over a year. The World Bank itself is saying that the time is now to prepare for the next crisis. Here in the United States, we have had over 500 banks fail in the past 5 years. As one would expect, the majority of those were during 2008 to 2010. Will it surprise you to learn that 20% of those banks have collapsed since the so-called recovery started? The signs are all there. We've got historical precedents and signs that point to an imminent financial collapse like we've never seen before. The rates of unemployment that we saw during the Occupy Wall Street movement of a few years ago are going to seem like a walk in the park to us. 50% of all new businesses have failed in recent years. If we had a strong dollar, maybe, just maybe, with a lot of belt tightening, we could get through these days without too much pain. However, the U.S. dollar is anything but strong. In fact, since the dissolution of the gold standard in 1971, there is nothing backing the dollar. The U.S. manufacturer H.L. Byram said, "The Federal Reserve Bank is nothing but a banking fraud and an unlawful crime against civilization." Why? Because they create the money made out of nothing, and our Uncle Sap government issues their Federal Reserve notes and stamps our government approval with no obligation whatsoever from these Federal Reserve banks, individual banks, or national banks, etc. So why do we care if the U.S. economy fails? Unemployment, breadlines, bankruptcy, foreclosures, banks closing, and skyrocketing prices are just a very few of the events that will happen when the economy collapses. Americans need to start paying attention. The U.S. government can't and won't be able to help her citizens during the impending crisis. As they say, wake up and smell the coffee. Time and time again, scholars, authors, friends, and neighbors have encouraged us to learn from history. Don't make the mistakes that so many thousands of people over hundreds of years have made anticipating that either nothing will happen or that it will not be a big deal. It will be a big deal, and you are the only one who can save yourself. We believe that it is possible for you to not only save yourself, but to thrive and prosper by following a few simple steps. After a great deal of research, we are confident that by following the steps, our ebook, Financial Gains for the New World Order, you will be able to continue living in the manner to which you are accustomed.